The Director General of Nigeria's Debt Management Office, Patience Oniha, has urged state governments to focus on generating tax revenue and adopting public-private partnerships to fund infrastructure projects rather than relying solely on borrowing. At a World Bank-facilitated workshop in Lagos, Oniha emphasized that public-private partnerships can boost Nigeria's economic growth by attracting private sector investment and expertise. This, she explained, would reduce the fiscal burden on governments, speed up project completion, improve quality outcomes, create jobs, and encourage innovation. CEO at Cowry Asset Management, Johnson Chukwu, and Accountant Olusesan Okunade join me now for this conversation. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Let me start with you, Mr. Chukwu. The Debt Management Office is advocating effective debt management practices in Nigeria, and right now, the warning is to state government. Why is that such a priority? Mr. Chukwu, if you can hear me, sir. Okay, Mr. Okunade, if you can take that on now, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I listened to your prologue on the response of the DG of the debt management, speaking to the state's government or the subnationals on areas where they need to improve in the debt management portfolios that they have by considering looking internally as against relying on external borrowing. Sincerely speaking, is the way to go. If we look at the current foreign exchange, which we have currently, which we have considered as creating more burden to some of the borrowing we are making internationally. But be it as it may, if we need to engage the private sector internally, the government themselves, both at the federal and the subnational, need to make certain things much more available. And I'll speak to the area of security. Having a conducive environment for business growth will definitely enhance quality delivery and improve improve the contribution that the organization will make to the government by paying their taxes regularly. We have seen from the new tax policy, the new tax act that has just been signed by Mr. President, of the collaboration that would definitely come in between the Federal Inland Revenue, which will now be regarded as the Nigerian Tax Authority Revenue Service, and the subnational, streamlining some of what we refer to as multiple taxation on the part of businesses in the country. If we can have the government adhere to some of these things that are embedded in the fiscal policy as entrenched in the new tax law that has just been signed, you will see a lot of relief that will give business growth to business organization in the country. And that on its own will definitely give way for private organization to carry out basic things that will assist in the development of our environment. I think is the way to go, but government on their own part to have a lot to do to create that enabling environment, because truth be told, that with the current foreign exchange cost, it's becoming overburdened on several organizations that have to rely on foreign borrowing.
All right, I understand we have Mr. Chukwu back. Okay, we're having a bit of a challenge with our connection with Mr. Chukwu, so I'll stay with Mr. Okunade. The DMO says borrowing requests have flouted the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which stipulates that borrowing should be for capital projects and human development purposes. How did the DMO consider this as a mere gap and not flag it as criminal non-compliance?
Felicity, I have this to say that there are several things that are wrong with our system. And a lot of us will say why we are where we are today, it's because there are no consequence management. There are a lot of wrongdoings on the part of those that are leading us and those that are being led, and that are not actually being punished, which now becomes a norm. if you are stating that we have actually exceeded the threshold of actually what are the measures that we are actually putting in place, how did we even get there? Because as the earth, your major area of concern is to monitor and advise the government in order to stay within the stipulated rules governing the debt management. If you have created that based on one thing or is to avail the room to say we at one point, created or overlooked what is supposed to have been done. And when such thing happens, you create pressure even on the future of the growth and development of such country. If this has happened, and we all realize that the major reason at which we must have this is for human capital and development. You and I understand that a lot of our resources that have been developed humanly in the country are actually advancing into other nations, not even repatriating back some of the funds that are actually making up there, which is really not assisting us. So I feel that area of address here is to speak to consequential management. When things are not done the way it should be done, as stipulated under the law, there should be punishment and consequences for those that have actually allowed the government to go beyond that which is expected of them.
We're talking about, right now, it's about borrowing guidelines, and what we are seeing is some kind of moral persuasion. Where do the real regulatory powers lie if we're merely talking guidelines and initiating advocacy?
Yeah, well, both works side by side. First and foremost, I'm of the advocate that we should adhere with the rules as against persuasive act, which we are coming to talk to the state government not to do. Don't forget, when this administration came on board, we know of the two main key policies, which is the removal of subsidy and unification of our foreign exchange that have given more revenue to the government, and the state government has have opportunity to enjoy more and receive more from the center. But we've asked ourselves, where are those that are supposed to be monitoring and actually asking questions about the spending of the subnational? A lot of us pick up budget of the federal government, but how many of us ask questions about the way the state expends their funds that are actually being generated? A lot of them also go at length in generating higher IGR. But the spending is actually the major concern, because there are still loopholes. There are actually opportunity for people to cut away with so much of government funds without questioning. And that on its own put pressure on the deliverable that they are supposed to make to the people. I feel that both align with the law and being persuasive go side by side, but I think we should be more stricter, in sticking with what the rule says and punish as many that might want to actually, defy the law to their advantage.
All right, let's try with Mr. Johnson Chukwu again. Mr. Chukwu, if you can hear me, can you acknowledge, please? Good evening.
Good evening, Felicity. Apologies, the network decided to take the whole sharing out of the program.
I understand completely. Sometimes these things happen. But now that we have you, let me go back to the first question I'll put to Mr. Okunade. The DMO is advocating effective debt management practices in Nigeria. And right now, the focus is warning state government. Why do you think it's such a priority at the moment?
Well, bear in mind that the state governments are major contributors to the GDP, and they contribute, in terms of share of the GDP, federation allocation, they take, between the states and the local government, which the states invariably control, they take over almost more than 50% of share of the federation allocation. So, and if the states build up debt, of course, we know today that national debt is tilted in favor of the federal government. The federal government is the major debtor. But if the states go on a borrowing binge, like we had in the past, where the then President Muhammadu Buhari had to forgive or grant some level of concessions for the states, you're going to have a situation where the subnationals will not be able to discharge their responsibility to the society, and that could lead to some social disharmony. So it is absolutely necessary that they are very prudent in the management of financial resources at their disposal. If you look at what has happened in the past 8 months, 7 months this year, the 3 tiers of government has shared about 12 trillion naira, more than 42% over what they shared, about 8 trillion naira by the same time last year. But interestingly, some state governments are still borrowing. So you can't justify that level of borrowing given the increment in their revenue. But beyond that, the purpose of borrowing, like Ms. Oniha said, is mostly they say is going to infrastructure. And some of this infrastructure, government has not proven to be the most efficient financial resource deployer when it comes to deploying financial resources on fiscal goods or particularly infrastructure goods. Some of these can be better managed by private sector in terms of cost value for money. The private sector is known to extract more value for money when they invest in infrastructure. The private sector is known to build physical infrastructure at a faster rate than the public sector. The private sector is known to reduce the cost of infrastructural build because they eliminate some of the wastages that are inherent in government procurement. So some of these reasons, it makes sense for the public sector, if they have to invest in some commercially viable infrastructure, to bring in private sector to do it with them, provide the right of way, which will not cost the state any additional cash resource, and then let the private sector build this. Felicity, there is a proof of concept we have in this country. If you cast your mind back, I don't know how old you are, if you are in your 40s or 50s, you will observe that there was a time when telecommunication infrastructure was an exclusivity of the federal government. And the government was building the masts. The government was extending the transmission lines, the cables. And I think it was said that Nigeria had only about 450,000 lines, active lines then. But when it was privatized and private sector now had to bring in private capital to that sector, today we have almost 200 million lines, active lines. You can almost get a line for peanuts. So it then means that private sector have a better capacity to build some physically commercially viable infrastructure than public sector. So there's no point wasting resources, burdening the state government, burdening our fiscal framework with debts just because the government said they want to build infrastructure, when that infrastructure can be built by private sector at no additional burden to any of us.
True enough. Just to answer your question, Mr. Chukwu, I am definitely over 40 and I am quite aware of some of the things you mentioned. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for speaking with us. We're out of time for this conversation. We do appreciate your time.